Good afternoon. I would like to move now to the presentation from CNSC staff as outlined in CMD 18H6 and 18H6.8. I understand that Mr. Frappier, you will start the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Jerry Frappier and I'm the Director General of the Directorate of Power Reactor Regulations here at the CNSC. With me today is Dr. Alex Victor Ahve, Director of Pickering Regulatory Program Division, and Heather Overington, Senior Regulatory Program Officer of the same division. Also, regulatory and technical staff from CNSC are present and will be available to answer questions should the Commission have any. The presentation complements CNSC staff's written submission found in CMD 18H6. Start first with the purpose of the presentation and to explain its structure. The CNSC staff presentation provides information regarding OPG's application to renew the power reactor operating license for the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station. In this presentation, we will provide a summary as well as some highlights from CNSC staff's evaluation of the license application and assessment of Pickering NGS's safety performance during the current licensing period. Full details of the CNSC staff assessment can be found in CMD 18H6. The current power reactor operating license for Pickering expires on August 31st, 2018. OPG has applied to renew the Pickering operating license from September 1st, 2018 to August 31st, 2028. Concurrently, OPG is seeking Commission's approval to operate fuel channels at Pickering's Unit 5 and 8 up to 295,000 effective full power hours. Note that the current license authorizes OPG to operate Pickering fuel channels up to 247,000 effective full power hours. As you can see from the outline, after a short introduction, this presentation will touch on a number of subjects important from the point of view of giving a complete picture of Pickering's safety performance. We will briefly describe CNSC staff's evaluation of the license application, results of the recently completed periodic safety review, specific aspects related to the end of commercial operation, outcomes of regulatory assessment of OPG safety performance, several areas of particular regulatory focus of interest, extended operation of the fuel channels, and the proposed license and license condition handbook. At the end, we will summarize CNSC staff's conclusions and recommendations regarding OPG's application to renew its operating license. I will now provide some background information on Pickering Nuclear Generating Station. Pickering Nuclear Generating Station consists of 8 CANDU pressurized heavy water reactors and their associated equipment, structures, and facilities, which were designed, constructed, and are operated to produce electrical power. Units 1 to 4 were retubed in the late 80s, early 90s. Units 2 and 3 are in safe storage state and will remain in safe storage until the eventual decommissioning of the station. Units 1 and 4 and Units 5 to 8 are operational. Each operating reactor has nominal electrical output of around 515 megawatts electric. In this presentation, or in staff's responses, we may sometimes refer to Pickering A and or Pickering B, which were the previous station designations. So for the record, Pickering A refers to Pickering Units 1 and 4, and Pickering B to Units 5 to 8. Pickering Nuclear Generating Station is located on the north shore of Lake Ontario in the city of Pickering, in the regional municipality of Durham, Ontario. The facility lies 32 kilometers northeast of downtown Toronto and 21 kilometers southwest of Oshawa. The facility is owned and operated by Ontario Power Generation Incorporated and generates about 14% of Ontario's electricity. The Pickering nuclear site also contains the Pickering Waste Management Facility, which is licensed separately under a Class 1B Waste Facility Operating License. Pickering also produces cobalt-60, a radioactive isotope used for sterilization of medical equipment and food products. Cobalt-60 is harvested from the irradiated reactor components that are removed from the reactor during planned outages. As all nuclear power reactors in Canada, Pickering reactors are a can-do design. These reactors were designed by Atomic Energy of Canada Limited. They use heavy water as a coolant and as a moderator and are fueled on power with natural uranium. A special feature of Canadian multi-unit nuclear power plants is that reactors are placed within an interconnected containment with a large vacuum building. On the photograph, Pickering Unit 1 is the one with a white circle on the top. Unit 4 is on the very left. Units 5 to 8 are on the right. The large structure in front of is the vacuum building. It is also possible to see the water intake channel with the fish diversion system barrier net. The current power reactor operating license for Pickering expires on August 31st, 2018. OPG has requested the license to be renewed for a period of 10 years. As OPG intends to cease commercial operations of Pickering on December 31st, 2024, the requested license period will cover 3 distinct phases: operation, defueling and operations of the reactor on power until December 31st, 2024, a stabilization phase, which will include post-shutdown cooling, defueling, and dewatering, that will last approximately 3 to 4 years, and then the beginning of safe storage for the units that are not in safe storage now. The proposed license and accompanying license condition handbooks sets the requirements and expectations for continued operation, as well as for the transition from operation to safe storage state. Later on in the presentation, this transition will be further discussed. I will now pass the presentation over to Dr. Victor Ahve, who will discuss CNSC staff's evaluation of the OPG application for license renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Frappier. It's Alex Victorov, and I am the Director of Pickering Regulatory Program Division. Commission Member Document 18-H6 provides details of CNSC staff evaluation of the license renewal application, as well as important highlights from the ongoing CNSC staff compliance oversight. This presentation will summarize, from CNSC staff perspective, the most significant aspects of the license application review. In August 2017, OPG submitted an application for the renewal of its Pickering Power Reactor Operating License. This was followed by submission of supplemental information regarding implementation of new or revised regulatory documents and standards. To arrive at the conclusions and recommendations presented to the Commission in CMD 18-H6, CNSC staff assessed OPG's license application and supporting information, examined the licensee's past performance and compliance with regulatory documents and requirements, and considered other matters of regulatory interest. Examples of such matters include Indigenous engagement, public outreach, response to previous actions from the Commission, and follow-up on the Fukushima Action Plan. In anticipation of OPG application for the license renewal, CNSC staff set out prerequisites for the information to be included in the application. These prerequisites were based on the past best practices and aligned with the CNSC regulatory document Reg Doc 1.1.3, License Application Guide, License to Operate a Nuclear Power Plant. Once the application was received, CNSC staff evaluated its completeness and proceeded to detailed assessments to confirm that the operation of Pickering has been and would be meeting regulatory requirements. CNSC staff also confirmed that appropriate regulatory documents have been identified for inclusion in the license and license condition handbook as compliance verification criteria. Furthermore, CNSC staff has assessed whether OPG will have a sound operating strategy, considering that the plant will cease power production during the next license period. Staff recommendations regarding the license renewal application are not based only on examining the application. During the current license period, CNSC staff have been performing the right compliance activities and collected information characterizing safety performance of the licensee. The main types of compliance oversight activities include inspections and technical assessments. CNSC Pickering Site Office employs a number of highly qualified inspectors who conduct various types of inspections, and where necessary, those inspections are supported by technical experts from Ottawa. On the slide, we give numbers of inspections conducted during the current license period. Technical assessment represent in-depth critical reviews by CNSC technical specialists of the information provided by OPG. Such information may be in forms of scheduled reports, safety analysis, event reports, revision of OPG governance, or research and development reports. As can be seen from the slide, over years, CNSC staff maintained steady regulatory oversight of Pickering safety performance. To sum up, the CNSC staff, in its evaluation of OPG's application for license renewal, anchored themselves in a robust regulatory framework, relied on factual evidence collected through CNSC oversight activities, as well as submitted by OPG, used modern practices and tools, and build on practices that have been proved successful in the past. In the next few slides, I will go over the main points of the periodic safety review conducted by OPG in support of its license application. A periodic safety review, or PSR, is a comprehensive evaluation of the design, condition, and operation of a nuclear power plant. A PSR is proven to be an effective way to obtain a comprehensive view of the plant safety and to identify safety improvements. A PSR is complementary to, but doesn't replace, regulatory oversight activities. CNSC requires that OPG perform a PSR if Pickering operation were to be extended beyond 2020. Regulatory document RegDoc 2.3.3 establishes CNSC requirements for the conduct of PSR, and it identifies the 4 phases in the conduct of such reviews. The first phase is the development of a basis document which sets out principles, rules, and scope, and describes the methodology for the conduct of such review. The PSR document is produced by the licensee and reviewed and accepted by CNSC staff if deemed sufficient. The second phase of PSR results in preparation of safety factor reports. These reports contain detailed technical assessment that compares the plant design, actual condition of systems, and operational processes to the modern standards. In the third phase, the global assessment report integrates findings of the safety factor reports into an overall assessment of the plant condition and helps determine practical actions to enhance the safety. Finally, in the fourth phase, the identified safety improvements are brought together in the integrated implementation plan. The integrated implementation plan is accepted by CNSC staff and will form part of the licensing basis of the facility. The conduct of Pickering PSR included the review of 74 modern codes and standards. The outputs of these reviews resulted in 63 actions included in the integrated implementation plan, aiming to align the station design and processes with modern requirements. Along the highest-ranked safety enhancements included in the scope of the IAP are those related to, first, updating the life cycle management plans for the major components, such as steam generators, feeders, calandria internals, and fuel channels. 2, revising safety analysis impacted by effects of aging. 3, implementing upgrades to strengthen protection of containment integrity. And 4, performing condition assessments for piping system and components, such as valves, pumps, and heat exchangers for the extended period of operation. Implementation of the integrated implementation plan would be required by the proposed license condition 15.1. And all IIP actions are targeted for completion by December 31st, 2020. This slide presents the process to derive the actions which were ultimately included in the PSR Integrated Implementation Plan. In the conduct of the periodic safety review, OPG identified 120 gaps from the reviews against the 74 modern codes and standards, and the review of the continued operation plan and re-examination of the post-Fukushima action plan. CNSC reviewed all OPG submissions and further identified 23 gaps. Using a global assessment method, OPG consolidated the 143 gaps into 51 global issues representing common themes or related subjects. The global assessment also resulted in 117 resolution plans. These resolution plans were then screened to determine whether they need to be included in the integrated implementation plan as follows. 22 resolutions plans were judged to require no further action. Since the issues either have been already resolved or plans existed for their resolution outside of the periodic safety review process. 35 resolution plans were determined to be acceptable deviations since the issues were of very low significance or other options were established to meet the intent of safety requirements. Another 35 resolution plans were identified as requiring actions in the integrated implementation plan and developed into the so-called resolution statements, or more specific projects with concrete deliverables. Also, 25 resolution plans were labeled as cross-reference, meaning that their scopes are covered under the 35 plans. The resolution statements were ultimately expressed as 63 distinct actions to be executed by OPG in the integrated implementation plan. Results of the periodic safety review are the product of a detailed and systematic assessment by OPG that required more than 2 years of effort to complete. CNSC staff remained engaged in a close regulatory oversight throughout the project and undertook a meticulous independent examination of the PSR method, scope, and outcomes. Based on the CNSC staff conclusions, CNSC staff accepted the PSR basis document and subsequently the integrated implementation plan. CNSC staff conclude that OPG has performed a PSR review in accordance with CNSC requirements. Pickering design, operation, processes, and management system will ensure continued safe operation of Pickering to the end of 2024. The actions identified in the IAP will further enhance safety of the station, and Pickering Nuclear Generation Station will only be operated if fitness for service of the structures, systems, and components important to safety is continuously assured. CNSC staff will be evaluating OPG's execution of the IAP and updating the Commission on the status of the IAP actions as part of the annual NPP Regulatory Oversight Report. In the following slides, we will describe how the end of commercial operation fits within the requested license period. On the 28th of June 2017, OPG informed CNSC that all Pickering units would cease commercial operation on December the 31st, 2024. After the units are shut down, the reactors will undergo stabilization activities when fuel is removed from the reactor cores and placed in the radiated fuel base. Most systems will be drained and de-energized. Those systems required to assure cooling of irradiated fuel, radiation control, and security provisions will remain operational. The beginning of the safe storage stage in 2028 marks also the beginning of the station decommissioning. OPG's strategy for operation and eventual decommissioning of Pickering consists of 5 stages as shown on the diagram. It includes continued operation until December 31st, 2024, stabilization activities from 2025 to 2028, safe storage with surveillance from 2028 to 2050, station dismantling and demolition from 2051 to 2061, and finally, site restoration from 2061 to 2065. The dates at this time are tentative. OPG is requesting a 10-year license. Therefore, the requested license period would cover stages 1 and 2, as well as the beginning of stage 3. CNSC staff recognize that the approaching end of power generation and transition to safe storage will pose unique challenges and require special licensing provisions. Such challenges will necessitate dedicated regulatory oversight that are not fully covered by baseline programs. In anticipation of the permanent shutdown of the Pickering reactors, the proposed license contains a site-specific condition 15.4. In particular, the condition will require OPG to implement and maintain plans for the end of commercial operation, such as Sustainable Operation Plan and Stabilization Activity Plan. Should OPG decide or be required to operate any unit beyond December 31st, 2024, the compliance verification under this license condition will require that OPG notifies CNSC no later than December 31st, 2022 of its intent to operate any unit beyond December 31st, 2024, and provide a timeline and scope for the assessment of the safety impact of operations beyond 2024. The Sustainable Operation Plan, or SOP, covers the period leading to the end of commercial operation. It is to be developed and implemented at least 5 years prior to the permanent shutdown of any unit and updated annually. The Stabilization Activity Plan, or SAP, covers the period after permanent shutdown leading to safe storage. The SAP is to be developed and implemented at least 3 years prior to the permanent shutdown of any unit and implemented immediately after the unit is shut down. The two plans, SOP and SAP, must demonstrate how requirements within all 14 safety and control areas will continue to be met during this period. It is expected that two plans will include the following elements: the long-term workforce planning, human performance and staffing strategy while approaching to the unit shutdown, and from the unit shutdown through the transition period to safe storage, and demonstration that systems, structures and components will remain fit for service while they are required to assure safety. OPG expected to continuously analyze emerging issues during this period, leading to the end of commercial operation. This slide shows the relationship between the regular CNSC programs and activities and additional plans for overseeing the end of commercial operation. CNSC staff will conduct regular compliance oversight activities to ensure the licensee and implements implements and maintains programs required by the license and in accordance with the compliance verification criteria. The PSR and resulting IAP identify safety enhancements for the continued safe operation of Pickering during this period. CNSC staff will also assess implementation of the IAP by executing focused compliance verification activities. The Sustainable Operation Plan and Stabilization Activity Plan identify unique incremental activities within each safety and control area that may not be covered by existing programs. CNSC staff will assess deliverables under these two plans and follow up with OPG as required. And staff will include updates on the progress of these activities in the annual NPP Regulatory Oversight Report. Commission Member Document 18-H6 presents CNSC staff assessment of Pickering safety performance for each of the 14 safety and control areas in detail. Outcomes in all safety and control areas, as well as they constitute specific areas, were summarized to reflect Pickering performance during the current license period. Here, I would like to point out that the systematic presentation of the regulatory oversight for all regulated activities in well-formulated safety and control areas is one of the strong features of the Canadian regulatory regime, which compares favorably with the international counterparts. This approach allows a comprehensive and balanced consideration of all aspects important to safety. This slide tabulates Pickering safety performance ratings for the 14 safety and control areas during the current license period. SA indicates a satisfactory rating and FS represents fully satisfactory rating. As you can see, Pickering performance has been satisfactory or fully satisfactory across all areas. Results for 2017 have not been fully processed yet, but CNSC staff expect that there will be no change from performance in the 2016. Results of 2017 will be presented to the Commission with the annual NPP Regulatory Oversight Report. In one safety and control area, namely the radiation protection, results went down from fully satisfactory to satisfactory in 2016, and the specific reason for this will be explained later on in this presentation. Overall, CNSC staff compliance oversight confirms that Pickering Nuclear Generating Station has a good safety record. There are currently no major safety issues. CNSC staff concluded that OPG meets regulatory requirements in all safety and control areas and received a satisfactory rating or higher in each area. Licensee programs are implemented and maintained effectively and in accordance with the regulatory requirements in all safety and control areas. No workers or members of the public received radiation doses in excess of the regulatory dose limits. Releases of nuclear or hazardous substances are controlled, monitored, and assessed, and were below regulatory limits. Safety enhancements and improvements continued to be made during the current license period. In other words, OPG is qualified to carry on activities authorized by the license. CMD 18-H6 provides detailed information on Pickering performance in all safety and control areas. The next few slides will focus on selected topics judged to be of particular interest to the stakeholders. And I will pass the presentation over to Ms. Overton, who will discuss these topics.
Thank you. My name is Heather Overton, for the record. I'll be discussing 5 areas of regulatory focus. These are probabilistic safety assessment, fitness for service of fuel channels, radiation protection, environmental protection, and emergency preparedness. Probabilistic safety assessment, or PSA, provides numerical estimates of the likelihood of various scenarios and their consequences. It also provides risk insights, which can be used for design or operational improvements to further enhance plant safety. OPG completed S-294 compliant PSAs for Pickering A and Pickering B by 2014. In accordance with regulatory requirements for periodic updates, OPG submitted an updated Pickering B PSA in December of 2017 and will submit the updated Pickering A PSA by December of 2018. In addition, OPG will submit the additional analysis required by Reg Doc 2.4.2, which has superseded S-294, by the end of 2020. These will include the consideration of other sources, such as irradiated fuel bays and other plant operating states. During the license period, OPG also developed and implemented a risk improvement plan as requested by the Commission following the Pickering license renewal hearing in 2013. The risk improvement plan included physical, procedural, and analytical changes to further reduce plant risk, focusing on the dominant risk contributors. As will be shown in the next slide, the dominant risk contributors for Pickering A is the Fire Level 1 and Level 2 PSA and Pickering A Internal Events Level 2 PSA. The implementation of the risk improvement plan resulted in significant reductions in the PSA results. Lastly, during the license period, OPG also completed a whole site PSA for Pickering, as requested by the Commission. I'll discuss the whole site PSA a bit later in the presentation. This slide shows the current Pickering A and Pickering B PSA results. The Pickering B results are those submitted as part of the 2017 update, and the Pickering A results are those from the 2014 submission, except for fire hazard, which was reassessed in 2017 as part of the risk improvement plan. The red line on these graphs indicates the safety goal or safety goal limit, and the purple line represents the safety goal target, which is sometimes called the administrative safety goal. The safety goal limit represents the limit of risk tolerability above which actions must be taken to reduce the risk. The OPG safety goal limit for core damage frequency is 1 × 10⁻⁴ occurrences per year, and for large release frequency is 1 × 10⁻⁵ occurrences per year, per unit, per hazard. They are consistent with the international practice for existing nuclear power plants, which are documented in IAEA publication NSEG-12. The safety goal target, set 1 order of magnitude lower, represents the desired objective towards which the facility should strive, provided that measures to reduce risk are practicable. The safety goal target for core damage frequency is 1 × 10⁻⁵ occurrences per year, and for large release frequency is 1 × 10⁻⁶ occurrences per year. These are consistent with the CNSC design requirements for new nuclear power plants. As can be seen from the charts, the unit aggregated core damage frequency, which is the chart on the left, and the large release frequency, the chart on the right, for all hazards, meet the safety goal limits for existing plants. Core damage frequency and large release frequency for all hazard groups meet administrative safety targets, except for Pickering A internal fires for core damage frequency and large release frequency, and Pickering A internal events for large release frequency. As OPG is currently updating the Pickering A PSA to credit the risk improvement plan projects, it's expected that the overall Pickering A core damage frequency and large release frequency will be further reduced. Whole Site PSA characterizes the overall risk of the nuclear facilities at the site, taking into account the benefits from the emergency mitigating equipment added as part of the Fukushima Action Plan. The scope of Whole Site PSA includes the impacts from both internal and external hazards on all reactor units and on all other major radiological sources at the site, such as the irradiated fuel bays. OPG submitted a concept-level Whole Site PSA methodology in February 2014, which was reviewed and accepted by CNSC staff. OPG submitted the Pickering Whole Site PSA report in December of 2017. The Pickering Whole Site PSA results were presented to the Commission at the Commission meeting in December of 2017 in CMD 17-M64.1. To summarize some of the information provided during that update, this slide shows the results for the site-level aggregated core damage frequency and large release frequency. The charts show that aggregated site core damage frequency is below the unit-based core damage frequency safety goal of 1 in 10,000 years, and the aggregated site large release frequency is below the unit-based large release frequency safety goal of 1 in 100,000 years. After OPG completes the Pickering A PSA update plan for the end of 2018, it's expected that the whole site aggregated core damage frequency and large release frequency can be further reduced. As a reminder, a whole site PSA is not a requirement, but is regarded as a complementary safety assessment for quantifying the overall nuclear site risk, with the acknowledgement that this is a new and not yet mature methodology. Both the CNSC and industry are following the international developments for improving the methodology. CNSC staff are currently reviewing OPG's whole site PSA submission and will provide the Commission with the assessment results and conclusions in the NPP Regulatory Oversight Report. I'll now discuss fitness for service of fuel channels. Managing the aging of major components is integral in ensuring the safe long-term operations. As part of the Integrated Aging Management Program at Pickering, OPG has life cycle management plans for all major components. Life cycle management plans identify the activities that are undertaken to continuously assess component condition and their fitness for service. This includes activities such as evaluation of the component's aging degradation mechanisms, inspection methods, and repairs or replacement strategies. Of particular regulatory focus is the aging management of fuel channels in light of OPG's request to operate units 5 to 8 up to 295,000 effective full power hours. This request will be discussed in more detail later in this presentation. In January of this year, CNSC staff provided a technical update to the Commission on fuel channel evaluations for Canadian nuclear power plants. CMD 18-M4, which is available on the CNSC website, specifically addressed the pressure tube fitness for service requirements and evaluation methodologies that are established in CSA standards. CNSC staff continue to review the results from fuel channel inspections that occur routinely during planned inspection outages. Inspection results to date confirm that the safety margins are being maintained. OPG's fuel channel life cycle management plan identifies mitigating strategies should fitness for service assessments not be able to meet acceptance criteria up to the end of the evaluation period. During the license period, OPG continued to implement an effective radiation protection program to protect the health and safety of persons inside the facility and ensure that occupational and public exposures are below regulatory dose limits and maintained as low as reasonably achievable, or ALARA. Pickering's rating in the safety and control area declined from fully satisfactory to satisfactory in 2016. This was due to non-compliances related to the calibration and use of fixed and semi-portable gamma monitors. Despite those deficiencies, CNSC staff confirmed that OPG continued to ensure the protection of their workers through other protective measures such as routine surveys, work plans, and dosimetry requirements. There were no exceedances of action levels or dose limits. As a result of CNSC enforcement actions, OPG took immediate measures to return to regulatory compliance. Staff will continue to follow up with OPG on remaining corrective actions through regular compliance verification activities. This slide presents the distribution of annual effective doses to all monitored persons at Pickering. The vertical red line on the far right of the slide indicates the annual regulatory dose limit of 50 millisieverts for nuclear energy workers. As you can see, in the current license period, there were no radiation exposures at Pickering that exceeded the annual regulatory dose limit. The majority of doses received by workers at the facility are at or below 1 millisievert, which is the regulatory limit for a member of the public. CNSC staff are satisfied that the radiation protection program at Pickering is effective in maintaining doses below regulatory limits and ALARA and protecting the health and safety of persons. The CNSC conducts an environmental assessment under the Nuclear and Safety and Control Act for all projects to ensure the protection of the environment and the health of persons. The environmental assessment report considers current operations and future activities. The report was produced using a number of different sources, as shown in the blue boxes on this slide. OPG Pickering, these include OPG Pickering environmental protection measures, the updated environmental risk assessment and the predictive effects assessment, results from CNSC's independent environmental monitoring program and other regional monitoring, as well as the results of annual compliance reports and the preliminary decommissioning plan for Pickering. The CNSC Environmental Assessment Report is provided in Appendix F of CMD 18-H6. CNSC staff's environmental assessment concluded that OPG has and will continue to make adequate provision for the protection of the environment and the health of persons. In April 2017, OPG submitted an updated environmental risk assessment for the Pickering site based on effluent and environmental monitoring data for the 5-year period between 2011 and 2015. CNSC staff completed a detailed technical review of the 2017 ERA and found it to be consistent with the methodology of CSA Standard N288.6-12. CNSC staff concluded that OPG's ERA for Pickering provides a complete evaluation of all potential risks to human health and the environment associated with the facility operations, and that meaningful adverse ecological and human health effects due to releases to air and water from Pickering are unlikely. CNSC staff's assessment of the ERA was also provided to the Commission in CND 17-H5.B during the license renewal hearing for the Pickering Waste Management Facility in 2017. Interveners were also given an opportunity to review the ERA during the Waste Management Facility license renewal hearing process. Since the submission of this current CMD, OPG has addressed CNSC's recommendations to validate several ERA conclusions and improve the quality of the next ERA update. This also includes the 2 specific items in the environmental assessment report related to thermal discharge matters. The last area of regulatory focus that I'll discuss is emergency preparedness. OPG has effective emergency management and fire protection programs at Pickering that meet regulatory requirements. In addition, as shown on this slide, OPG undertook numerous activities during the current license period to enhance emergency preparedness and response capabilities. OPG will also update its emergency response plans to reflect the changes in the Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan. CNSC staff conclude that OPG has sufficient provisions at Pickering for emergency preparedness and response. On December 6th and 7th, 2017, OPG conducted a full-scale exercise at Pickering. Exercise Unified Control was designed to test the capacity of on-site groups and off-site agencies to respond to a nuclear emergency at the Pickering site. The exercise simulated a severe accident and tested OPG's ability to respond to extreme events, including the use of the portable emergency mitigation equipment and connection points added to the plant post-Fukushima. Multiple external agencies, including the CNSC, participated in the exercise. In addition to simulating CNSC response in case of a nuclear accident, CNSC staff conducted an inspection of the OPG performance. Inspection results confirmed OPG readiness to respond effectively to a serious accident. The Commission heard earlier today from the Office of the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management about the new Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan, or PNERP. During the public consultation period, CNSC staff provided comments to the province, focusing on the PNERP's alignment with national and international standards. CNSC staff also modeled accident scenarios at Ontario nuclear facilities to support validation of the planning assumptions. CNSC staff have confirmed that the updated PNERP conforms to both CSA N1600 and IAEA standards on emergency management. When discussing the emergency response to a nuclear accident, it's important to keep in mind that all practical steps are taken to prevent such accidents from ever happening. In other words, to make them extremely unlikely. The recent evaluations of the risk of severe core damage and large release frequencies were presented earlier when discussing the PSA results. These results demonstrate that the likelihood of a serious accident remains very low. The reduction of the likelihood of severe accidents comes from several improvements, such as completion of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 emergency mitigating equipment to supply emergency makeup water to the steam generators, heat transport systems, and calandria vessels, thus ensuring continuous fuel cooling and monitoring. Strengthening containment robustness by assuring provision of cooling water and power for containment air coolers. Installed hydrogen passive autocatalytic recombiners in all Pickering units, and implementation of severe accident management guidelines to guide plant staff in preventing and mitigating accident progression to a severe accident. The Integrated Implementation Plan commits OPG to implement additional safety enhancements that will ensure capabilities to exist to prevent an accident from progressing to a severe accident and to mitigate the consequences should a severe accident occur. In this next series of slides, I'll provide a summary of the following subjects: CNSC outreach, public consultation activities, and participant funding program information, First Nations and Métis engagement, a summary of the IAEA OSART mission to Pickering, information about the Pickering Fisheries Act Authorization, and an update on the Fukushima Action Plan. The CNSC communicated to the public, stakeholders, and Indigenous groups information regarding the regulatory process for the renewal of the Pickering license. A variety of communication methods were used, such as traditional news release, feature articles, and social media. In addition, a CNSC open house was held at the Pickering Community Centre on March 8, 2018. The notice of public hearing and information about the participant funding program was issued in September of 2017. Participant funding allows for the provision of new, distinctive, and valuable information to the CNSC through informed and topic-specific interventions. Up to $100,000 in participant funding was made available. A funding review committee independent from the CNSC reviewed the funding applications and made recommendations. The CMD reported that 9 recipients had been awarded participant funding. Since then, an additional group has also been awarded funding. The 10 recipients, including 2 First Nation communities, will be reviewing OPG's license renewal application and other documents and preparing written and oral interventions for Part 2 of the Commission hearing. As an agent of the Crown, the CNSC understands the importance of building relationships and engaging with Indigenous peoples in Canada. The CNSC ensures that all its licensing decisions under the Nuclear Safety and Control Act uphold the honor of the Crown and consider any adverse impacts to potential or established Aboriginal and treaty rights. CNSC staff have provided information to and engaged with interested First Nations and Métis, including meetings, to strengthen relationships and better understand issues and concerns related to the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station. Issues and concerns raised to date include impacts on localized fish populations, perceptions and impacts on harvesting, transportation and storage of waste, participation in the CNSC's Independent Environmental Monitoring Program, and understanding CNSC processes and practices. All of the identified First Nations regional representative bodies, and Métis Nation of Ontario Region 8 have been encouraged to participate in the review process and in the public hearings to advise the Commission directly of any concerns they may have in relation to this license application. The CNSC has and will continue to meet with First Nations and the Métis Nation of Ontario Region 8 to discuss any issues or concerns and maintain productive and respectful relationships. At the request of the CNSC, in 2016, an IAEA Operational Safety Review Team, or OSART, conducted a 19-day mission to evaluate Pickering's operational safety performance against IAEA safety standards. OSART missions provide member states with the opportunity to share best practices and to support continuous improvements to the facility operations. The 2016 OSART team concluded that management at Pickering Nuclear Generating Station is committed to improving the operational safety and reliability of the plant. The team identified 8 good practices, 11 suggestions, and 10 recommendations. To date, the OPG Corrective Action Plan is approximately 85% complete. OPG is targeting to complete the remaining improvement actions by Q2 of 2018. With the exception of the recommendation related to managing alcohol and drug testing of key staff in safety important roles. Independent of this recommendation, the Commission have published Reg Doc 2.2.4, which is the Fitness for Duty Volume 2 on managing alcohol and drug use. And OPG was submitted and has submitted its implementation plan for this Reg Doc as of the end of March. With respect to the Fisheries Act Authorization, prior to 2015, OPG had been working towards applying for Fisheries Act Authorization after being informed by CNSC staff that Pickering operations would require one. Following an episodic fish impingement event at Pickering in 2015, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, or DFO, issued a warning and determined that OPG must apply for an authorization under Section 35(2) of the Fisheries Act. OPG submitted their application to DFO in July of 2017, and the authorization was granted in January 2018. The authorization requires that OPG install the Fish Diversion System Barrier Net by May 1st and that it remain in place and functioning until November 1st of each year. As well, OPG is required to offset the residual harm caused to fish and fish habitats with offsetting measures. As per the Memorandum of Understanding between the CNSC and DFO, CNSC is responsible to inform DFO of any non-compliance with the conditions of the authorization. The DFO authorization is valid until December 2028. Lastly, an update on the Fukushima Action Plan. All Fukushima action items have been closed for Pickering, and one station-specific follow-up action remains open, as indicated in the CMD. OPG has recently requested closure of that station-specific action item, and CNSC staff are reviewing the request. In a complementary evaluation performed during the periodic safety review, OPG reassessed Pickering Fukushima action items to determine if there were any impacts associated with plant operation to 2024, and whether the closure bases of the Fukushima action items remain valid in the context of extended operation. CNSC staff reviewed the results of OPG's reassessment and identified an additional gap that was incorporated into the PSR Integrated Implementation Plan. The additional gap is related to the Fukushima action item for protection of containment integrity during severe accidents. The corresponding Integrated Implementation Plan actions will strengthen Pickering's provisions for controlled filtered venting. As committed in the Integrated Implementation Plan, OPG will implement safety enhancement modifications and design changes to protect containment integrity and ensure additional barriers exist to prevent the initiating event or accident from progressing to a severe accident, and to mitigate the consequences if a severe accident occurs. Specifically, OPG will complete interconnections to make fire protection system water available to the steam generators, heat transport system, and calandria in Units 1 and 4, and complete the necessary power and support service connections required to restore the functionality of the main volume vacuum pump. Actions to provide emergency power and cooling water to the air cooling units in all reactor units, as well as emergency power to the hydrogen igniters and filtered air discharge system, are already complete. CNSC staff will continue to confirm that procedures and instructions are in place to operate existing venting provisions in case of a severe accident, such that the containment integrity is protected while minimizing the releases. OPG has implemented and will continue to implement physical and programmatic changes that will further enhance safety by ensuring the existence of provisions to prevent an initiating event from progressing to a severe accident, and ensuring availability of options for controlled, filtered, post-accident venting. OPG will implement the majority of IIP modifications and provisions related to protecting containment integrity to ensure controlled, filtered venting by December of 2018. The remaining 2 actions will be completed by December of 2020. CNSC staff will update the Commission on the status of actions related to the protection of containment integrity as part of the annual regulatory oversight report for nuclear power plants. I'll now pass the presentation back to Dr. Victor Ahve to discuss OPG's request to operate Pickering Units 5 to 8 up to 295,000 effective full power hours.
Thank you. Once again, it's Alex Victor for the record. Currently, Pickering Station is approved to operate to 247,000 effective full power hours. OPG is seeking the Commission approval to operate fuel channels of Pickering Units 5 to 8 up to 295,000 effective full power hours. This is the maximum value expected for any unit before the end of commercial operation. Units 1 and 4 had their pressure tubes replaced in the mid to late 1980s Therefore, the accumulated effective full power hours values are significantly lower. OPG has implemented measures to maintain fuel channel fitness for service as required by the license and the license condition handbook, including execution of periodic inspections program, consideration of internal and external operating experience, and implementation of outcomes from research and development projects. The safe operation of fuel channels is demonstrated through the assessment of the current and expected conditions based on an understanding of relevant degradation mechanisms. Research activities, as well as inspection and maintenance programs, provide data to periodically validate the input parameters for these assessments. In January 2018, CNSC staff provided a technical update to the Commission on fuel channel evaluations. As discussed in CMD 18-M4, for all the stressors, the dominant contributor to risk of a fuel channel failure is deuterium ingress, which has a direct impact on the material fracture toughness. Deuterium ingress is expressed in terms of hydrogen equivalent concentration. Adequate fracture toughness is required to prevent a fuel channel from abrupt rupturing if a small crack develops during operation. OPG, along with other Canadian utilities, uses two fracture toughness models, which are covering hydrogen equivalent concentration levels up to 120 parts per million. By the end of 2024, the lead unit at Pickering in terms of deuterium ingress is estimated to reach hydrogen equivalent concentration levels below of 100 parts per million. In the next license period, OPG and the industry will continue research activities to enhance the current understanding of fracture toughness and other fuel channel agent-related degradation mechanisms. OPG will document these activities in the Pickering Fuel Channel Readiness Plan. The Readiness Plan will include research activities needed to enhance the fracture toughness models used to evaluate safety margins. Information from the Fuel Channel Readiness Plan will be submitted annually for the CNSC staff review. CNSC staff expect that the ongoing and planned activities will continue demonstrating that the fuel channels are fit for service up to 295,000 effective full power hours. Regardless of the maximum approved value of effective full power hours, OPG must always demonstrate to CNSC staff that fuel channels are robust enough to continue safe operation of Pickering reactors. Based on the current hydrogen equivalent concentration predictions, Pickering fuel channels are not expected to reach 120 parts per million before the end of their target service life. However, in case the future predictions for any fuel channel exceed or even approach 120 parts per million before the end of commercial operation, CNSC staff recommend a specific license condition 15.3 to be added to the license. This license condition will ensure OPG to maintain fracture toughness sufficient for safe operation and will assure presence of adequate compliance verification criteria. CNSC staff recommend that the Commission approve the operation of fuel channels of Pickering Unit 5 to 8 to a maximum of 295,000 effective full power hours. I will now briefly discuss the proposed license and license condition handbook. Both these documents are included in CMD 18-H6. Please note that at this time, these documents are considered draft and may change prior to Part 2 of the Commission hearing. The Power Reactor Operating License is a fundamentally important document as it establishes a licensing basis or the set of conditions under which the applicant would be allowed to operate a facility. It also describes specific activities which the license holder is authorized to conduct, as well as a period during which such activities may be conducted. The License Condition Handbook spells out specific criteria used by CNSC staff to verify that the conditions of the license are being met. The existing License Condition Handbook for Pickering, as well as recently approved License Condition Handbook for other Canadian NPPs, were used to develop the proposed License Condition Handbook for Pickering. In addition to requirements, the License Condition Handbook provides guidance. Up-to-date CNSC regulatory documents and Canadian standards are used for setting regulatory requirements and expectations. CNSC staff strives to use standardized wording for the license conditions for all power reactor operating licenses. This approach promotes consistency in licensing and compliance verification and helps achieve common interpretation of the license requirements for all nuclear power plants. The standardized license conditions require licensees to implement and maintain programs which govern safety-related activities in a systematic, comprehensive manner. In addition to standard license conditions, 6 site-specific conditions are proposed, which will be listed later on. It's important to note the license does not prevent the licensee from modifying its operating conditions or limits. The changes with a neutral or positive impact on safety are considered to be within the licensing basis. However, the changes with negative safety implications shall be justified and approved by the Commission. OPG has continuously demonstrated satisfactory performance and a commitment to seek safety improvements in all areas. Safety performance has been stable or improving during the current license period. Results of the periodic safety review demonstrate that the facility can be operated safely and adequate safety margins have been and would be maintained. The integrated implementation plan identified further safety enhancement to be carried out in the coming years. On this basis, CNSC staff are recommending a 10-year license period as requested by the license applicant. However, within this 10-year period, OPG is only authorized to operate the power reactors on power until December 31st, 2024. Should circumstances arise requiring OPG to operate any reactor unit past this date, OPG is required to notify the CNSC and obtain Commission approval, as this will be a change to the licensing basis. Safety performance of Pickering will continue to be reported annually to the Commission. This practice provides the public with frequent updates regarding the outcomes of CNSC regulatory oversight activities. At this point, I would like to provide evidence that the proposed draft license and license condition handbook allow for adequate regulatory oversight. There will be no reduction in regulatory requirements compared to the current license. There are currently a total of 25 CNSC regulatory documents referenced in the draft license condition handbook as compliance verification criteria. 22 documents are referenced in the current license as well, but 4 of those in the new license condition handbook will be recently revised versions. 3 new CNSC regulatory documents have been added as updated requirements in the proposed license condition handbook. Early versions of regulated documents are being replaced by new versions in the spirit of continuous improvement. The full list of regulatory documents can be found in the appendix section of the License Condition Handbook. In addition to the CNSC regulatory documents, there are currently a total of 25 CSA standards referenced in the License Condition Handbook. 14 of those are listed in the current license, and 5 of them were updated. 11 new standards have been added in the proposed License Condition Handbook. In addition to regulatory documents and CSA standards setting requirements, a further number of documents are identified as guidance, often with the intent of transitioning such documents to requirements following an appropriate period for implementation. I will now pass this presentation back to Mr. Frappier for CNSC staff conclusions and recommendations.
Thank you. For the record, it's Jerry Frappier. Commission member document CMD 18H6 describes in detail CNSC staff's conclusions and recommendations for the Commission's decision regarding the license renewal application. In the next couple of slides, I will summarize the CNSC staff's position regarding OPG's application for renewal of the Pickering operating license. Based on the assessment of OPG's application and past safety performance, CNSC staff conclude that as per Section 24(4) of the Nuclear Safety Control Act, OPG is qualified to carry out the activities authorized by the license, and in carrying out the licensed activities, OPG has made and will continue to make adequate provisions for the protection of the environment, the health and safety of persons, the maintenance of national security, and measures required to implement international obligations to which Canada has agreed. CNSC staff recommend that the Commission accept CNSC staff's conclusions presented in CMD 18H6 and exercise its authority under the Nuclear Safety and Control Act to renew the license to authorize OPG to carry out the activities listed in Part 4 of the license from September 1st, 2018 to August 31st, 2028. It is also recommended that the Commission authorize OPG to operate fuel channels of Pickering Units 5 to 8 up to a maximum of 295,000 effective full power hours. With respect to License Condition 3.2, CNSC staff recommend the Commission delegate the authority for consent to restart a reactor after a serious process failure to the following CNSC staff: the Director of Pickering Regulatory Program Division, the Director General, the Directorate of Power Reactor Regulations, the Executive Vice President and Chief Regulatory Operations Officer of the Regulatory Operations Branch. This delegation of authority would be unchanged from the current license. Furthermore, CNSC staff recommend that the Commission accepts the standardized and station-specific conditions included in the proposed license. The 6 license conditions specific to Pickering Nuclear Generating Station require OPG to 1. Implement the Integrated Implementation Plan, 2. Maintain Units 2 and 3 in a safe storage state, 3. Maintain pressure tube fracture toughness sufficient for safe operation, 4. Implement and maintain plans for the end of commercial operation, 5. Implement and maintain a Cobalt-60 program, and 6. Limit the activities of import and export of nuclear substances to those occurring as contaminants in laundry, packaging, shielding, or equipment. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Commission. We are prepared to respond to any questions you may have regarding this presentation.
Thank you.